please welcome Dr. Patrick Quaid.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear this okay. I don't want a booming voice. I'm soft-spoken, but I have been told I speak quickly. So somebody this morning said that they listened to my lecture from COVD last year and they slowed it down to like 0.5, which I thought was quite funny. So let me know if you can't hear me. I am soft-spoken. So I need to go up in volume. Up, up, up. Okay. Give me a second here. How's that? Better? No. Better? No? No. Okay. Apparently I need to shout. How's that? Better? We're good. All right. How's that? Better? We're good? We're good now. Okay, I need to speak louder too, apparently. So, thank you very much to Nora for inviting me to speak. Just as a word about last night, I actually called Eric Singman, and he was very happy, very appreciative. So I'll try to take his award to him at Hopkins, and he basically said, we now have an excuse for me to go to Hopkins and do a lecture, so that's going to be fun. So I'm going to start off the lecture here, just no conflicts to declare. I always like those slides, you know, Chuck Norris, I represent injured people, it's always good. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story about my background. I like to put this up here because then people look at this and go, geez, is this guy trying to compensate for something? And I start off my lectures, if you've heard me speak before, this is usually how I start off my lecture, and I kind of go self-deprecating. But I was told I'd be lucky to finish school twice. I was in a motor vehicle accident with my dad when I was 8 years old. I was knocked out of commission for about 3 years, had a speech impediment, vision issue, saw double. The speech issues were recognized very, very quickly, of course, because you could hear it. It was amazing how quickly that was picked up and treated. My neck was treated. The visual system was kind of sort of treated, but not really treated very well. I saw a whole bunch of optometrists and ophthalmologists and was told that 20/20, you're fine, all the usual nonsense. And I ended up going through about 15 eye docs. My dad is in the military, my mom was a nurse. And just to give you my family history, my mom was a strabismic amblyop, 2200 in her bad eye and 20/80 in her good eye. Right? My dad was a bilateral +6, didn't get his first prescription until 12 years old. So you can imagine what his primary school education was like. So, and by the way, he built half of our house. I mean, this guy's a genius. If the exam tomorrow was building a house, I would fail and he would pass. So the definition of intelligence is very much situation dependent. So my dad, being in the military, got me in with an optometrist in the Army and said, look, you're used to dealing with traumatic brain injuries. So I ended up seeing an optometrist who, you know, really did basic orthoptics, it's not VT, did very basic work with me and significantly helped me to the point where I could at least function. I could at least track and read, and I wasn't perfect, but I was a lot better. So in a way I was lucky because at 11 years old I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I want to be an eye doctor, this is cool. So I ended up going up to Dublin to do my undergrad in medical statistics, which I should have had my head tested for doing that, but apparently that's what I decided to do. I was born in the south of Ireland, just for context. Went to the UK, did optometry at the University of Bradford, and ended up going to work in Moorfields Eye Hospital. I was really disappointed, by the way, with optometry, because I went through optometry and learned nothing about VT, nothing about ocular motor dysfunction, nothing about processing. They trained us to be very good prescribers of meds and prescribing of glasses, checking for eye disease, and all that stuff is honorable and good, but very little on VT. Ended up going to work in Bradford Royal Infirmary and Moorfields Eye Hospital, which in the UK, if you have an eye problem, when you go to emerge, you actually see an optometrist first, God forbid, right? And if it's a surgical problem, you triage to the surgeon. Makes perfect sense. And the way the funding model works in the UK is the department gets funding. So they don't differentiate between an ophthalmologist and an optometrist. You're an eye person. So the more eye people you have, the more funding the department is allocated. So there's very little animosity between ophthalmology and optometry because the more eye people in the department, the more money they get. So you remove the financial conflict of interest and everybody just works together. It works quite well. So fast forward, I end up speaking to John Flanagan, who's now the dean out in Berkeley, and he was at Moorfields for a while. So he ended up at the University of Waterloo, as you know, and now he's in Berkeley. But I phoned him up and I said, I'm looking to learn something about the brain, right? And he said, okay, I've got a PhD for you, and it's in psychophysics. Now, who here in this room gets excited when they hear the term psychophysics? Really, right? But if I tell people, you know what, it's not psychophysics, I studied illusions for 4 years. Now that sounds cool. I get to study illusions and how they trick the brain, right? So I basically did a 4-year PhD in basically neuroanatomy, psychophysics, and how the brain, what I didn't realize, and maybe the dude upstairs is playing strings here, but I was prepping myself to go into VT because I was learning about how the brain worked. What made sense, what didn't make sense, how we process via different pathways. So then after my PhD, when I thought, hey, I'm doing pretty good, I'm doing okay, then I ran into the VT world and felt like an idiot because I felt like I knew nothing. So I ended up, W.C. Maples, who I'm sure most of you know, has got to be one of the smartest people I've ever met. W.C. and Eric Singman, John Flanagan, Trefford Simpson, Kurt is here, a whole bunch of optometric people. I'm standing on their shoulders. So the award I got last night is not. I don't view it as for me. It's for my team and my clinic. It's for the people who've gotten me here. And unfortunately, my mom actually passed away in the last week of my PhD. She was diagnosed on a Monday with ovarian cancer, passed away on the Friday. So that was a bit of a kick in the teeth. But I think from a standpoint of my journey to where I am now. When I met W.C. Maples and when Dan Cunningham, who unfortunately couldn't make it here, but he's the other FCOVD in our practice, and Dan trained at Nova, and he has really opened my eyes, excuse the pun, to really what proper VT should be. So the whole VT process, the whole FCOVD process I went through has really been, I've learned far more from my FCOVD process and from my vision therapy journey than 10 PhDs put together. So I always kind of joke and self-deprecate and say my PhD is my piled high and deep. It's what I had to go through to get where I am now, right? I never really wanted to be an academic full-time, and that's no disrespect to any of the academics. I just felt like when I was in the research lab, I wasn't seeing patients. I was never content. When I was in the clinic full-time, not tracking data, I was never content. So I was never happy in either world. So the clinic that we have now in Guelph, View Cubed, is we're kind of unique because we have a government grant called SHRED. So we actually have government funding to fund research papers as a private clinic. That's unheard of. So we've gotten some really good funding from the government. They're starting to wake up that what we're doing is useful. So that's just an overview. So you'll realize I used this quote last night. I wouldn't be much of an Irishman if I didn't. So Yeats always says, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. What I think NORA and COVD and OEP and Vision Therapy Canada, all these fantastic groups are doing is they're equipping our next generation of people to make sure that they're competent in this area. And that, I really don't care what label you have my respect if you're teaching people how to do VT the right way, okay? So let's get tucked in. I love this picture. What's the right sequence? What's the right approach? How do we tackle these cases? Everybody has something to offer, but what if we're all correct? Every single area is an issue. How do we move forward together in a cohesive way? What's the proper way to work together, right? And that's kind of the challenge that I'm continually working on. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but I'm working with a wonderful group in Ontario. We have a doctor of audiology who's American Institute of Balance Board certified. We have a neuropsychologist. We have a neuromuscular specialist. We have a TMJ specialist. And we get together probably about once a month, and we duke out our cases. And we challenge each other. Here's a case that's not working, and it's a very healthy debate around the table. And honestly, if you remove the expletives and the F-bombs, you would have, if you could just bottle that conversation every month, it's fantastic. It's really open and honest, raw conversation about why would we do this in this sequence, and there's no egos involved. We're all trying to learn. It's a fantastic group. It really, really is. I like this slide because, as I said, I did 2 years in the military. And because after high school in in Ireland, you actually get your tuition paid for your first degree if you do 2 years in the military. And what I like about this video is nobody is getting over the wall unless they work as a team. And I always view the patient as the last person here. So unless everybody else does their job correctly, this last person is not getting over the wall. The whole team has to do a proper job prior. That requires planning and thinking, right? So the analogy, that's what I use when I'm trying to work with the team that I work with, is trying to keep that in mind. Now, illusions are cool, trust me, they are really, really cool. You would never show this to a concussion patient. It's kind of like it's like a BDT test, Merrill Bones one. But if you look at the blue star, I hope this works, I'm pretty sure it will. If you look at the blue star, I'm going to show a red dot over here on this side. And the dot's going to move. So I'm going to ask you to look at the blue star, but not look at the red dot until I say go. Right? Now, look at the blue star. Keep looking at the blue star the whole time. And while you're looking at the blue star, which direction is the dot going? Diagonal. Now, look at the dot. Ooh. Ooh, that was cool. See, we got a massive, ooh, right? So, what's happening there? What's happening is, where I'm looking, the periphery, if there's enough background influence that's moving in that is oriented a certain way, it actually influences what direction you believe the object is moving.